Regine Abad. I was assigned to discuss about ethnography in research. So, ethnography has a long history in social science. Over the years, ethnography gained a small but steady foothold in political science, in public administration, and public policy studies. Today, ethnography has diverged out in business, educational, and medical research. Ethnography was developed as a tool of social science and involved the social scientific observer, the observed, the research report as a text, and the audience to which the text is being presented. In this presentation, we will discuss about what is ethnography, what are the advantages and disadvantages of ethnography, methods of ethnographic research, and how to use the ethnography. What is ethnography in research? Ethnography, emerging from anthropology and adapted by sociologists, its methodology lends itself to the study of the beliefs, social interactions, and behaviors of small societies involving participation and observation over a period of time and the interpretation of data collected. Ethnography is a qualitative research method in which a researcher or an ethnographer studies a particular social or cultural group with the aim to better understand its methodology. Ethnography is both a process. One does the ethnography, and the product one writes an ethnography. It also requires that the researcher interacts with the people whose actions he or she seeks to understand. Moreover, he or she needs to engage in those actions. In addition, ethnographic research involves observing variables in their natural environment or habitat in order to achieve or to arrive at objective research outcomes. Ethnographic research has its roots in ethnography, which is the study of people, cultures, habits, and mutual differences. This systematic investigation interacts continuously with the variables and depends almost entirely on the data gathered from the observation of the research variables. Ethnography or ethnographic research can be classified as two. First is the classic ethnographic research. It involves a detailed description of the whole of a culture outside of the country of origin of the researcher. Traditionally, those who engage in ethnographic research spend years in the place of the study, also known as the field. As a result of the time spent living among communities, ethnographers have been able to produce thick written cultural descriptions known as ethnographies that communicate the information found in the field. The other one is contemporary ethnographic research. Has the added dimension of not only looking at the people outside of the country of origin of the researcher, but also seeks to better understand those who reside within the country of origin. It also looks at what may be considered ordinary or commonplace to those living within a community. For example, shopping malls, corporations, towns, cities, and even in cyberspace. Ethnographic interpretation, like classic and contemporary, are both descriptive and interpretive. Descriptive because detail is so crucial, and interpretive because the ethnographer must determine the significance of what he or she observes without gathering broad statistical information. And there are types of ethnographic research. First is the business ethnographic research, educational ethnographic research, and medical ethnographic research. Business ethnographic research is a research design that involves observing customer habits and target markets in order to discover true market needs and the overall disposition in the product or service. It is extremely beneficial research tool that can help the organization identify its customers' needs and satisfy market demands. However, several studies indicate that there are several issues in using ethnography in business, such as the study involves shorter period of participant observation. But despite of this, ethnographic research in business can still be informed by a theory of cultural interpretation. Next is educational ethnographic research. This research design involves observing teaching and learning methods and how this affects classroom behaviors. This research model pays attention to its effects on learning outcomes and overall engagement by stakeholders within the classroom environment. Typically, educational ethnographic research studies students' attitudes, academic motivations, and dispositions to learning. And the last one is medical ethnographic research. Medical ethnographic research is a type of ethnographic research used for qualitative investigation in healthcare. This research helps the medical practitioners understand the disposition of patients ranging from the simplest to the most complex behavior patterns. Medical ethnographic research enables the healthcare provider to have access to a wealth of information that will provide useful for improving a patient's overall experience. For example, through ethnographic research, a healthcare product manufacturer is able to understand the needs of the target market, and this will in turn influence the product design. Ethnography has its own method in research. Typically, there are 5 basic methods of ethnographic research, which are naturalism, participant observation, interviews, surveys, and archival research. First is live and work, or also known as naturalism. Research technique in which the researcher observes the research variables in their natural environment in order to identify and record behavioral patterns. It may involve living in the natural environment of the group or individuals being researched for a period of time in order to record their activities. Naturalism is the oldest method of ethnographic research, and it may create some degree of rapport between the ethnographer and the research variables. When using this method, the researcher must ensure that he or she limits the interference with the subject to the barest minimum in order to arrive at the most objective research outcomes. The second one is participant observation. It is a data collection method where the ethnographer gathers the information by participating actively and interacting with the research subjects. There are two types of observation, which are disguised and undisguised participant observation. The disguised participant observation, where the ethnographer pretends to be part of the research subjects while hiding his or her true identity. The undisguised participant observation becomes part of the group being observed and reveals his or her identity as a researcher of the group. The third one is interview, a qualitative research method that merges immersive observation with one-on-one discussion in order to arrive at the most authentic research outcomes. In this research design, the ethnographer converses with members of the research group as they engage in different activities related to the research context. An ethnographic interview is usually informal and spontaneous, and it typically stems from the relationship between the researcher and the subject. The next one is surveys, an inductive research method that is used to gather information about the research subject, and it involves outlining hypotheses in the form of survey questions and administering these questions in the research environment. And last one is archival research. It's a qualitative approach to ethnographic research in which the researcher analyzes existing research documents and other sources of information about the research group in order to discover relevant information. What are the advantages and disadvantages of ethnographic research? According to several studies, a qualitative research method, ethnography offers several advantages. First, ethnography can account for all the complexity of the group behaviors, reveal interrelationships among several dimensions of group interactions, and provide context for behavior. In addition, ethnographies can reveal qualities of group experience in a way that other research methods cannot. They can help determine future questions and types of follow-up research. By expanding the range of knowledge and understanding of the world, researchers often are able to understand why behaviors occur rather than just noting the occurrence. Ethnographic research also allows you to have access to a wider and more accurate data scope than the other research design. This research approach collects the first-hand information about the research variables and gives the ethnographer a wider range of data to work with, thereby resulting in more objective research outcomes. Ethnographic research has several disadvantages to consider as well. This type of research is time-consuming and requires a well-trained researcher. It takes time to build rapport and trust to the informants or participants in order to facilitate full and honest discourse. It is also subject to experimental biases stemming from the relationship between the subjects and the researcher. And it could be a capital-intensive too. The last one is, how do we use ethnography? The concept of field implies that the research is carried out in the real world. The field site is the place in which your research happens, such as a small enterprise, a department in a larger company, or a shopping center. Ethnographic research often starts with choosing a field site. Thereafter, you generate a guiding research question appropriate to that specific site. It is also possible to start with a theoretically derived research question about a certain cultural process and to find a site where the question might be appropriate. For example, there are study of Giroy 2005 tested a pre-given theoretical model in her ethnographic study in retail branding. So either way, setting up a research project can work as long as the site and the questions are relevant to one another. Ethnographic fieldwork typically begins with participant observation, which is later complemented by other data, example like interviews and documents. Keeping field notes is a key activity performed by ethnographer. Everyday events are recorded along with the participants' perspectives and understandings. Initial observations focuses on the general, open-ended collection of materials resulting from learning the basic cultural rules and language used at the site. This initial orientation process is very important for providing a background for a more focused investigation. It also helps the researcher to gain a rapport with the participants and test out whether the original research objectives are appropriate in the local situations. And then after, ethnographer engage in participant observations in order to gain insight into the culture in which they are interested. So these insights develop over time and in relation to the social relationships in the field, as well as through repeated analysis of many aspects of the field sites. And lastly, the field notes create a major part of empirical data on which the conclusions of research will be based. Now, the completed written ethnography both speaks and adds to establish theoretical discussions. So therefore, theory is important in ethnography research for at least two reasons. First, theory has a key role in helping generate guiding questions for ethnographic investigations and allowing you to address larger questions about how culture works among diverse group of people. Second is through applying theoretical tools to what you learn in the field, and you can better understand the social life in a certain research setting. It is through theory that the data gained wider meaning and relevance. So therefore, ethnographers must apply some theoretical concepts to their data at some point of their research.